Hello again, and thanks very much for joining us. I am Michael Nath. Now, the World Bank says Nigeria's efforts at reducing poverty might hit rocks if certain economic issues are not addressed. These include low human capital, labor market weaknesses, and exposure to shocks. This is contained in the new World Bank report, A Better Future for All Nigerians, Nigeria Poverty Assessment 2022. The report represents the culmination of the World Bank's engagement on poverty and inequality, relevant data and analyticals in Nigeria in the past 2 years. The report draws its conclusion from the 2018-19 Nigerian Living Standards Survey, which provided Nigeria's first official poverty numbers in almost a decade, as well as the Nigeria COVID-19 National Longitudinal Phone Survey. These surveys, according to the report, were implemented by Nigeria's National Bureau of Statistics in collaboration with the World Bank. The report further notes that jobs do not translate Nigerians' hard work into an exit from poverty, as most workers are engaged in small-scale household farm and non-farm enterprises. Just 17% of Nigerian workers hold the wage jobs, best able to lift people out of poverty. Now, telecommunication companies are proposing a 40% increase in the cost of calls, SMS, and data to the Nigerian Communications Commission as a result of the rising cost of running a business in the nation. Based on their proposal, their price floor of calls will increase from 6.4 naira to 8.95 naira, while the price cap of SMS will increase from 4 naira to 5.61 naira. This was revealed in a letter titled Impact of the Economic and Security Issues on the Telecommunications Sector, which was cited by our correspondent. According to them, the telecommunication industry has been financially impacted following the nation's economic recession in 2020 and the effects of the ongoing Ukraine-Russia crisis. They said this had resulted in an increase in energy costs, increasing their operating expenses by 35%. Nigerians made use of point-of-sale terminals 3.03 million daily times to process payments in the first 2 months of 2022, as the use of checks dropped to a 6-year low, according to data obtained from the Nigeria Interbank Settlement System PLC portal. The data shows that Nigerians used POS services 178.99 million times in the first 2 months of 2022, a 25.59% increase from the 142.51 million times it was used in the corresponding period of 2021. The total value of these transactions was 1.15 trillion naira, a 19.76% increase from the 958.14 billion naira worth of transactions that were processed in the corresponding period of 2021. To help us understand this development further, I am joined by Gospel OBELE, a business analyst and the CEO, Street Economics. Interview time right now. Hello, Gospel. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Now, the point of sale POS started some 5 years ago has become the new normal in Nigeria. Now, the new technology saves time and energy spent during transactions in banks. Everybody can attest to this fact. Now, what are the other possible reasons for this preference?
If I get the question clearly, the growth in POS transactions?
Oh, yeah. The reason people tend to prefer using POS technology now rather than going to the banks.
Yes, so looking at the nature of growth and development of financial services when it comes to the technology bit, we realize that there was a growing awareness and acceptability of payment, especially when it comes to safe, convenience, or perceived safe and convenient payments. There's a rising traction around that, and consumers are beginning to look for more interesting ways to pay and to exchange goods and services without having to deal with the conventional banks. Let's not also forget that the model around POS, in as much as it was built on cashless economy, was also built from the standpoint of trying to close the gap, across challenges of facilitating payments and transactions with conventional banks. So as a result, institutions are pushing forward alternatives, to sort of grow capacity to facilitate payment in the region, and also to build some form of convenient options for Nigerians. So convenience, largely, is the number one major reason why we'll see that traction there. However, there are needs and concerns around the safety and security of transactions. There's also needs and concerns around data infrastructure, network infrastructure, in terms of facilitating speed of response from all stakeholders involved in payments processing.
Yes, as the POS system is getting more popular than ever this time around, one needs to find out how secured is POS technology, both for the vendors themselves and the customers.
Well, it's still largely very work in progress. In fact, the entirety of the Nigerian payments industry is largely a work in progress still, and that's because the players who are heavily involved in the payments industry will see that it's some of like a traction for startups than banks in the sense. So a lot of startups are beginning to go into the core payments, merchandising, and other subsectors of fintech that makes them get into the pool of selling POS machines and partnering with other payment processors to facilitate payments on POS machines. So what happens is that the fintech partner takes the money from the customer or the consumer, and then with all 2-3 other layers, facilitate payments with the corresponding payment processor and the bank in itself. That circle is expected to go across for 1 minute, particularly, before you can say that the transaction is complete. However, the concerns around network, the quality of network and service provision in that space, data protection, consumer data protection, financial payment data protection as well, and as well as containing cyber attacks and cyber risk when facilitating payment processing through that medium. So, in as much as convenience is a major block for consumers in Nigeria, there are fears around the growing number of fintechs, a lot of which you can't really verify, and players in the payment processing block who are trying to have access to consumer payment information. So, security, data safety, network infrastructure are major critical challenges and critical blocks that needs to, and as well as regulation as well, needs to come into the fore of managing financial payments transition to a large extent, especially POS. To also flip the conversation round, in growing markets in Nigeria, we've seen an increase in agent banking. And agent banking not as endorsed by key commercial banks or fintechs, but random individuals. So if you walk through a conventional street in Nigeria, you can find almost 4 to 5 POS points where people can withdraw cash through POS or form of exchange one transaction on the other through POS. And these platforms are managed by young Nigerian people, seemingly unverified agents and all that. And that puts a lot of exposure and risk for a lot of young people as well, for Nigerians in its entirety. I know there's a conversation about providing jobs for young people, and that looks like agent banking looks like a very much interesting space to be in. But that space needs to be sanitized. There needs to be a lot of structure. There needs to be a lot of formality of engagement. We need to know who the POS transactions folks on the streets of Nigeria are reporting to, and what's the chain of engagement when it comes to managing consumer complaints and all of that. How do we hold them responsible? So regulation is very critical. Data safety is very critical. Financial payment transactions and all of that. Safety and security is top of mind, to facilitate growth in this space.
Now, knowing problems or the sources of problems is like halfway to the solution of these problems. What is the federal government doing to address some of these challenges you have enumerated?
I really don't. I see this context more from the Apex Bank trying to take responsibility. But I don't think that the Apex Bank has a critical in-route, in terms of ground-level intelligence as to what's happening. That means what's going on within the context and what are the nuanced nature of the challenges that exist in this context. So the central bank has sort of put themselves forward to manage these dynamics, but we haven't really seen some form of clear policy guidelines, some form of clear institutional regulatory process and guidelines provided to manage and curtail these challenges and as well scale solutions. So it's more or less a market that has been exposed to many vices and possible risk in as much as it deals on the number one part of things, which is convenience. So we're looking forward to the central bank working more closely with the commercial bank. In fact, it will burst a bubble to note that in some cases, you visit the ATMs of some commercial banks and those ATMs aren't working. But just very close to the bank, you see a conventional, informal retailer who operates a POS owned by the bank. And in that case, the ATMs are not working in the bank, but the retailer has a lot of money to give to people who cannot withdraw money from the ATM. And what that happens is that for every 500 naira, 5,000 naira transaction, for every 5,000 naira transaction, you're being charged 200 naira. For every 1,000 naira transaction, you're being charged about 350 to 400 to 500, depending on the location. Now, it has also evolved to a point where banks intentionally do not stock ATMs, and then you find retailers charging exorbitant prices for people to get access. In the first place, why should the average person be able to withdraw money from a roadside informal retailer in the name of having access to a bank POS device and all that? So that's to tell you the level of security, data and transaction leakages happening in the Nigerian economy, and some form of extortion also. And I see that the consumer protection also has to work closely with the central bank as well as the commercial bank to clean up this leakage of this menace.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Gospel, for one of time. Thank you very much for being part of the program. Now, all right, now to the rest of the news. Nigeria had to import emergency supplies of potash from Canada in April after the country's inability to get the fertilizer from Russia due to the impact of Western sanctions against Russia. The managing director of Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority, Uche Oji, disclosed this in Lagos but declined to comment on prices. It, however, reported that spot prices on Tuesday were up more than 250% for deliveries to West Africa compared to last year, according to commodities pricing agency Argus Media, dealing a further blow to the country's finances. The move shows one of the major unintended negative consequences of sanctions to punish Russia for its invasion of Ukraine. Operators in the LPG space says Nigeria requires about $750 million investment in the transportation and retailing of infrastructure for liquefied petroleum gas, popularly called cooking gas, to achieve the target of 5 million metric tons of annual consumption. Speaking at the second annual virtual LPG workshop organized by the African Refiners and Distributors Association, which was attended by experts, they also stated that Nigeria's gross domestic products might witness $1 billion growth yearly through optimization of flared gas. In his presentation at the workshop, the executive director, Rain Oil Limited, Emmanuel Omujini, stated that the investments would also be needed in gas adoption and utilization. He said, quote, Nigeria requires about $750 million investment in LPG transport and retailing infrastructure across the country to achieve the target of 5 million metric tons annual consumption. According to the report, an estimate of over $27 million will be generated by switching 50% of kerosene and firewood uses to LPG. Optimization of flared gas could also impact the country's GDP by up to $1 billion per year. That's $1 billion per year. Now, the President National Council of Managing Director of Licensed Customs Agents, Lucky Amiwero, has petitioned the federal government to review the 15% National Automotive Council levy the Nigeria Customs Service imposed on imported used vehicles. He said a 15% NAC slammed on imported used vehicles contravenes the Finance Act and automotive policy in the country. Amiwero, in a letter to the President Muhammadu Buhari, explained that the Finance Act of 2020 and 2021 do not make provision for the NAC levy of 15% by NCS, which was neither passed by the National Assembly nor signed into law. Amiwero, who was a member of the Ministerial Committee on Import Clearance Procedures and Implementation Fiscal Policies, said the Finance Acts have specifically approved duties and levies for motor vehicles, which is yet to be implemented by the NCS. The Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria, Lagos State Branch, has said it grew its profit by 162.02% in 2021. According to the association, in 2020, it recorded a 2.8 million naira loss, but recorded a 1.7 million naira profit in 2021. It said its income grew from 11.20 million naira in 2020 to 17.16 million naira in 2021, a 53.14% increase year-on-year. It disclosed this during its 2021 annual reports and accounts at its 2022 annual general meeting. According to the association, the branch's treasurer, Robert Naji, presented the audited financial statement. According to the organization, it recorded an increase in its educational activities of 2021 from 2.27 million naira in 2020 to 13.25 million naira, a 483.41% increase, while its net asset grew by 0.18% to 127.84 million naira from 127.60 million naira and had a 0.18%. Cocoa farmers in Nigeria, under the aegis of Cocoa Farmers Association of Nigeria, have vowed to increase the country's cocoa production in conjunction with other value chain stakeholders from present about 340,000 metric tons to 500,000 metric tons per 2025 or 2024. The new project, according to the CFAN president, Adegoke Adeola, is to make Nigeria the highest cocoa producer in West Africa by the year 2027. He stated this while speaking at the flag-off of the free distribution of cocoa cap handbook to smallholder cocoa farmers in Akure, the Ondo State capital. This ambition, according to him, is anchored on improved cocoa variety, national cocoa farm irrigation, the improvements of the livelihood of the smallholder cocoa farmers via the collection of $400 of land. Now, the differential overall statement improves on the cocoa sector from research, inputs, production, value addition, processing to export. Now, still to come, European Union countries will stop importing Russian oil. Details and more after this short break. Stay with us.
Are you a business owner looking for the right exposure to attract massive clients to your brand? The long search is definitely over. SME Hub allows you to showcase your products and services to a wide range of viewers and buyers nationwide. For further inquiries, please call Alero on 081-323-43262 or you can send an email to alero.obedere@ibrandtv.com. Grow your brand and boost your business on SME Hub, live on iBrandTV, where business comes first.
You're welcome back to watching Business Now from iBrandTV News Studios in Lagos. Now to Africa's scene. The United Nations Economic Commission for Africa has emphasized the need for trade data to incorporate informal trade in the measurement of intra-African trade in order to get a significant value and idea of the true state of affairs among entities. According to INECA, official trade statistics often capture formal trade and leave out informal trade, leading to underestimation of intra-African trade, intra-regional economic community trade, and African trade in general. It noted that understanding the scale of informal trade will be instrumental in accurately monitoring intra-African trade, particularly in the context of the AFCFTA. A trade advisor at the African Union Economic Development, Trade, Industry and Mining Department, Brian Mureveri, emphasized the need to come up with a concrete methodology that captures ICBT data in order to come up with evidence-based policies. Foreign news now. Fundamental shifts are taking place in the UK's labour market. According to reports, the pandemic has accelerated pre-existing trends such as automation and digitization, flexible and remote work, and the growing mismatch between employers' needs and the skills available in the workforce. The most immediate result is the widespread talent shortages felt by organizations up and down in the country. Industrial watchers said leaders are having to react by increasing wages and being more attentive to employees' demands. However, a more proactive and announced talent strategy may be needed to help improve retention and reap the rewards of an engaged, loyal and skilled workforce. The World Bank plans to revise the global poverty line from $1.90 to $2.15 due to increases in the costs of basic food, clothing and shelter across the world. This was contained in a fact sheet posted titled An Adjustment to Global Poverty Lines, which was published on the bank's website on Monday. According to the report, as differences in price levels across the world evolve, the global poverty line has to be periodically updated to reflect these changes. Since 2015, $1.90 has been the global line. As of fall 2022, the new global line will be updated to $2.15. Aside from the current $1.90 international poverty line, the World Bank tracks two other poverty lines that show the typical national poverty lines in lower middle income countries and upper middle income countries. These lines will be adjusted upward to $3.65 and $6.85 respectively. European Union countries will stop importing Russian oil and refined products, the head of the bloc's executive European Commission said on Wednesday, in proposing a sixth round of sanctions against Moscow for waging a war in Ukraine. We will phase out Russian supply of crude oil within 6 months and refined products by the end of the year, Ursula von der Leyen told the European Parliament, prompting applause from lawmakers. According to him, this will be a complete import ban on all Russian oil, seaborne and pipeline, crude oil and refined. The Russian ruble jumped on Wednesday to around a 2-year high against both the dollar and the euro, retaining the support of hefty capital controls as the European Union proposed a new package of sanctions against Russia over events in Ukraine. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen proposed a phased oil embargo on Russia, as well as sanctioning its top bank and banning its broadcasters from European airwaves in a bid to deepen Moscow's isolation. Now, by 0.843 GMT, the ruble was 2% stronger against the dollar at 69.53 after touching 68.6250 in early trade, its strongest since June 2020. It had gained 2.1% to trade at 73.19 versus the euro, earlier hitting 72.00, its strongest point since February 2020. OPEC sees a surplus of 1.9 million barrels per day in 2022, 600,000 barrels per day higher from a previous forecast amid expectations of slower demand growth this year, a report seen by Reuters showed on Wednesday. The report, prepared ahead of a meeting of the OPEC Joint Technical Committee meeting scheduled for Wednesday, also sees OECD oil stocks slightly exceeding the 2015-2019 average in the fourth quarter. The revision reflects a weaker oil demand growth forecasts adopted by Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries and its April oil monthly report. OPEC now expects 2022 world oil demand to expand by 3.67 million barrels per day in 2022, down 480,000 barrels per day from its previous forecasts.